The ranch stretched wide beneath the fading sunset, a vast kingdom of dust, fences, and silence that had long belonged to Royce Barrett, a man whose reputation as a hard-working cattle rancher was second only to the whispers that followed him wherever he went, that he was still a virgin at 50. Royce never spoke of it, never acknowledged the teasing glances or the muttered comments in town when he came in for supplies, but in the stillness of his home the truth gnawed at him. Years had passed with nothing but cattle, coyotes, and the lonely creak of porch boards to keep him company, and though he had strength in his shoulders and grit in his bones, he had never found someone to call his own. Women had passed through his life in fleeting glances, a smile here, a dance there at county fairs, but Royce's tongue always tied itself in knots, his feet clumsy, his confidence shattered like brittle glass. The young ranch hands mocked him behind his back, the townsfolk laughed over beers, and yet Royce buried it deep, pouring all of himself into the land, believing perhaps it was his fate to ride alone until the end of his days. That night when the storm rolled in, the sky tearing itself open with lightning, Royce had no idea his life was about to shift forever. He was mending tack in the barn when he saw her, a figure struggling against the wind, hair whipping wild, dress soaked through with rain. She stumbled into the light of his lantern like some apparition from another world, clutching a suitcase that looked more suited for polished hotels than dusty ranch roads. "Please," she gasped, breathless, eyes wide with desperation, "I need somewhere to stay, just for the night." Royce froze, stunned into silence. He had never seen a woman like her up close, refined, delicate, her hands pale and smooth, clearly untouched by the grind of ranch work. She looked like the city itself had spit her out into the wilderness, all perfume and broken heels. "Storm's too rough," Royce finally muttered, his voice gravel, "you'd best come inside." He offered her a blanket, hot coffee, a seat by the fire. She introduced herself as Clara, a city girl who had left behind a life of suffocating expectations, a fiancé she did not love, and a society that sought to cage her spirit. Her eyes carried secrets, her laughter masked pain, and though Royce knew he should keep his distance, something in her presence stirred a part of him long buried. As the storm raged, Clara talked and Royce listened, every word tugging at his heart, every glance sending warmth through veins that had known only cold solitude. By dawn, the rain had eased but Clara made no move to leave. "You don't know what it means to be alone," she whispered, though Royce knew that loneliness had been his only companion. Day turned to weeks, weeks to months, as Clara's presence wove itself into the fabric of the ranch. She struggled at first, blistered hands from carrying water, torn dresses from mending fences, but her determination was fierce. She laughed at the dust, cursed at the cattle, and slowly, Royce realized he was no longer walking the ranch trails alone. Yet with her came whispers. Townsfolk sneered at the idea of a polished city woman living under the roof of the old bachelor, wagging tongues fueling gossip. Some called her a gold digger, others predicted she'd be gone by winter. Royce tried to ignore them, but doubt ate at him, a cruel reminder of every time life had told him he wasn't enough. One evening, after a brutal day of work, Royce found Clara sitting on the porch, staring at the horizon with tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't belong here, do I?" she asked softly. The words cut him deeper than any knife. He wanted to tell her she belonged more than anyone ever had, that the ranch had come alive with her laughter, that his heart had found rhythm in her presence, but fear sealed his lips. It was then Clara reached for his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "Royce," she whispered, "you think I came here by accident? I chose this. I chose you." That night, in the flicker of lamplight, years of silence broke. Royce confessed his truth, his inexperience, his shame, expecting her to recoil, to laugh, to pity. But Clara only smiled, a smile both tender and fierce. "Do you think love is measured in notches or experience? It's measured in honesty, in courage. And you, Royce Barrett, are the bravest man I've ever met." What followed was not some reckless fling but a union forged in patience and trust, every moment a discovery, every touch a revelation. Royce's world, once barren and gray, bloomed with color, and Clara, once restless and lost, found roots deeper than she had ever imagined. But the frontier had a way of testing love. One brutal winter, cattle thieves struck, leaving Royce beaten and the herd scattered. Clara stood unyielding, rifle in hand, guarding the homestead through nights of terror. When Royce healed, he found not a fragile woman but a partner who matched his strength, who fought for their future as fiercely as any cowboy. Together they rebuilt, endured drought, battled storms, faced ridicule, and yet through every trial their bond only deepened. By the time spring returned, the townsfolk no longer sneered, they whispered with awe, for they had witnessed a man once mocked as a lonely fool transform into something far greater, not because he had gained wealth or renown, but because he had found someone who saw him truly, loved him wholly. Clara and Royce's story became legend on the prairie, not for gunfights or glory, but for proving that even the loneliest soul, even the man scorned for half a century, could find a love that turned dust into gold. Years later, as Royce sat with Clara on that same porch where she had once wept, the sun setting like a promise across the horizon, he squeezed her hand and whispered, "I thought my life was over at 50. Clara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "It was never over, Royce. It was only waiting to begin." And so the rancher who had once walked in silence found his song, not in the echo of cattle or the rustle of prairie grass, but in the steady heartbeat of the woman who had begged to stay the night and never left again.